Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to start putting the forks back together on the old and cheap Honda VFR. If you haven't seen part 1, please go and check it out. In part 1 I'm taking everything apart, and now we're going to get straight into it. So I've got all the bits cleaned and laid out here, and I have all the new bits from Honda, so let's start putting things together. I poured some oil in the cap to make it easier. And that's the old bushing that came out of the bike, but I don't have a new one, as I've explained in the previous video. When I bought all the bits from Honda I thought it's everything, but it's missing the lower bushings. But anyway, they look pretty good. There's no visible wear on them, so I'm happy to reuse them. And now for the upper bushing, I actually have a new one here. I'm just adding some tape to the top of the stanchion to prevent any damage to the new seals. And the new bush goes in, and the washer. Using a seal driver tool, I'm just going to tap it down until the bushing is sitting in its place. Using a little magnet, I can lift up the washer and see if the bushing is all the way down. And now it's time for the new seals. I'm just going to get them well lubricated before I try to install them. Just installing it gently over the top, and then pushing it all the way down. And now just drive it home. Once it's all the way down, it's time to install the retaining clip. And now for the dust seal. So I'm just going to leave the dust seal here. I'm not going to push it all the way in until I've repainted it, because I want to mask it all the way in there and basically have paint on this top edge. Now it's time to install the damper. One thing I do regret looking back is not taking that apart and giving it a better clean, but it's too late now. It should be okay. New crush washer for the bottom bolt. The damper started spinning again, so I had to use the impact driver to tighten it a bit before I could torque it to spec. So it's time to fill it up with oil. According to the manual, the correct amount is 457 cc's or milliliters of oil per fork tube or per leg, plus or minus 2.5. So in my case, this is not the most accurate thing. I've got 450 there, 455, 460. So I'm just going to go between 455 and 460, and that should be pretty good. We have to check the air gap anyway later, so that's going to be the more accurate setting. So yeah, let's get on with it. Now before I do anything else, I need to make sure the stanchion and the damper rod are properly primed. And make sure they're seated all the way down before I try and measure the air gap. And I just tried to check the level, and it looks like I'm barely touching, but it's not too obvious. So I'm just going to top up with a bit more oil and then remove the excess. And that's it. We should have the correct oil level now, and it's ready to install the rest of the bits. So I'm just installing the damper bleeding tool to make it easier. And in goes the spring, tighter coils towards the bottom. I can take the tape off now. Washer, spacer, and another washer. And now I can pull the damper rod out and install the C washer underneath it. The top cap has an O-ring on it, so I'm going to replace that before I put it back. And there it goes on the damper rod. I try to keep the lock nut in the same position, so I'm just threading it down to the nut and locking it together. And now I can slide the stanchion up and thread them together. I'm only going to do it hand tight for now and torque it to spec later once it's clamped in the bike. And that's it. One side is done. Let's have a quick look at the other one. And I'm not going to say anything here. I'm just going to let it run quickly through the assembly. Here we go, got the forks all back together and with a bit of paint on them. They look pretty good, but it's obviously not the best job in the world. I wasn't aiming it to be. It's just cleaning the paint as best I could. A few coats of wheel or rim paint and a few coats of clear. And it's a pretty big improvement, I'd say. But obviously stripping them to bare metal and maybe having them powder coated would have been a better option. But too expensive and time consuming at this stage, I believe. So yeah, let's fit them back to the bike. So let's quickly go through this. I'm just using a flat blade screwdriver to open up the clamp a little bit, and I'm going to push the fork up into its place. I've removed the fairings for a different reason, not related to the forks, but it makes things easier nonetheless. I've just gently nipped the bolt on each fork to stop them from falling back down. Now fitting the circlips back in their grooves. Now loosening back that bolt and dropping him to the right level. Now I'll just tighten everything back together, starting with the top clamp. I'll post the torque value from the manual in the top left corner. And now the handlebar. And the same thing on the other side quickly. Push the stanchion down and tighten the two clamps. And now that it's clamped, I can torque up the top caps. I'm just using a paper towel so I don't mark them. And now for the bottom clamp bolts. Now it's time to reinstall the front wheel. Tighten the axle bolt and the axle clamp bolts. I'm just making sure the fork leg floats on the spindle on this side. Now it's time to put the calipers back. I was missing a bleed nipple cap here, but luckily I had some spares. And the last two bolts. And last thing to do is install the front mudguard. And that's it. We're done with the front end. I deliberately didn't put the fairings back on because there's a bit more work I need to do on the dashboard, but we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.